This offseason, you will see a potential CJ Abrams trade floated around, but I am here to tell you that do not trade the guy. I've got a plan.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And yes, I'm your host, Ryan Clary. I am your Nationals insider here, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every single day. And later on in today's program, we'll have a discussion surrounding Eli Willits and kind of where he fits into this Nationals lineup moving forward. He's not going to be in the major leagues next season, but where does he fit into this whole puzzle? And we'll have that discussion later on in the show today. And I also want to remember one of our very good friends here on this program, someone who was on this show a handful of times, Craig Heist. He unfortunately passed away this past week. I want to share some good stories of him, working with him alongside in radio. And also, this is a voice that is synonymous with Nationals baseball. So we'll have a discussion around Craig Heist later on in the show today. But I'm going to tell you why the Washington Nationals absolutely should not trade away CJ Abrams. But today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download the app today. CJ Abrams, this offseason is going to be a very weird one. I think that right now, you will at some point this season see trade rumors surrounding CJ Abrams. We expect change within this organization. With Paul Tabone coming in as the head of baseball operations here, things are going to really change around here. But I don't think CJ Abrams will be a part of that plan to just kind of move off of him. In fact, I would keep CJ Abrams, and in another fact, I would extend CJ Abrams, but it would not to be my franchise shortstop. I think right now, the biggest question mark surrounding Abrams is where will he play defensively? I think right now, it's pretty safe to say that he is not our franchise shortstop. I have called him the franchise shortstop. I have said as much. I think that he is a good talent. I think he has the ability to be a good shortstop, but he has not been able to put it all together defensively. I see way too many easy, kind of just lazy mistakes, whether it be just not really getting his feet set when he's about to throw, whether it be not getting his hands in the right place for the turn over to short. You've all seen the mistakes here, and that's really just what's going to happen with Abrams going forward. He is not my franchise shortstop, but he is part of this franchise, and he is a big part of this franchise. The plan that I would have in place for Abrams would be to move him over to second base. I think that is a relatively easy decision. But talking about the trade talk with him, I think you will be able at some point this season, or maybe the offseason, you'll see Ken Rosenthal with one of his pieces in December saying the Nationals might trade CJ Abrams. There have been teams surrounding that. Teams want to call about him. They like his talent. They think that they can fix him defensively, and they think that he can kind of fix his inconsistencies elsewhere and get the most out of him. If the Nationals were to trade Abrams, you would have to get a massive haul in return for him at this point. I'm not willing to separate from him. I know that he is not our franchise shortstop. I know that. But why don't you just move him over to second base? Because if you talk about his offensive numbers over there, he might be elite. Abrams did not finish the season in his best condition. I mean, this is now back-to-back years where in the second half, CJ has kind of fallen off a little bit. And here are the numbers from the first half compared to the second half. The first half this year had an 836 OPS over 82 games. In the second half, over 62 games, he had a 633 OPS. Now, those are two things that are just a completely different story. And even then, Looking back at his 2024 season, where this guy should have been an all-star in my opinion, but he was not. He had an 831 OPS and a 586 OPS in the second half. There is a very clear difference talking about Abrams here. And I think we've all kind of understood that. The inconsistencies have always been real with him. And now, each of the past 2 seasons, he has kind of fallen off in the second half. Now, in this instance, I don't think it's obviously because he's your shortstop and he's struggling defensively, because I don't need to go over the numbers. You've all watched it. We've all seen it. This is not a franchise shortstop. He makes way too many mistakes. And when your team is ready to win, which hopefully should be in the next few seasons, then you want a steady, solid, good defensive shortstop in place here. Maybe the Nationals hand over the reins to Nasim Nunez. Maybe they've seen enough from him, because that is an elite defender over there at shortstop. He is great. He's got a tremendous arm. He covers range there. He makes the nice, smooth plays. He has great tags. Like, this is someone who is a great defender. So if you want to prioritize that for that position, then great, hand it over to Nasim Nunez and hopefully his bat turns around here. But also with that idea of it, maybe you go out there and make a trade. Maybe you go out there and sign someone. That's kind of where I see this going. I see the Nationals at this point moving Abrams over to second base, which obviously that leads to Garcia trade, or maybe him moving over to first base, or him, who knows what happens with the Garcia. But I could easily see the Nationals trying to trade CJ Abrams, ultimately not doing it, and then moving him over to second base. So the point of this conversation is this. As we enter 2026 and as we kind of get closer to the season wrapping up, where you start to see free agency rumors, where you start to see trade rumors on the market, I'm calling my shot right now. You will see Abrams on the trade market, by not the Washington Nationals standards, though. They are not going to be the ones out there calling GMs and saying, hey, we're looking to move off CJ Abrams. In fact, what's way more likely to happen is that Abrams will get an extension here. And I think that's what the Nationals should be doing, for the record. I want it to be known that Abrams is going to be a big part of this future. And he should be. This is someone who, again, if you do move him over to second base, the offensive numbers are there for him to be an elite hitter offensively. If you can fix some of his inconsistencies, where I think Tabone and just kind of the analytics surrounding him coming from the Boston Red Sox, I think that will turn around, and you will be able to see some tweaks in swings and launch angles and the way that they time their at-bats. I do think that you will see something of that sort here. But CJ Abrams, talking about his slugging this season, he had a 433 slug. That would rank ahead of Luis Garcia, who had a 412 slug. That would rank ahead even someone like a Brendan Donovan from the St. Louis Cardinals. And that would put him in the top 7 conversation for highest slug as a second baseman. Now, I think Abrams will be a lot better than that, because if you look at some of the guys on this list, you see Ketel Marte, Jazz Chisholm, Brandon Lowe, Jose Altuve, Bryce Terang. I think Abrams could be as good of a hitter as those guys going into 2026. I truly do believe in that. I think Abrams could hit 20, 25 home runs. We've seen that potential from him. I also think he can hit 30 to 40 doubles in a season. And I also think that he can steal way more bags than what he's been producing so far. So as far as Abrams goes, this is going to be someone who will be a very hot button topic for this season. You will see Abrams in trade rumor circles. But if I'm the Washington Nationals today, I am moving Abrams over to second. I'm doing whatever you want with Luis Garcia. If you non-tender him, okay. If you trade him, nice. If you keep him, sure. But I'm moving Abrams to second. That leaves a hole over at shortstop, but I do believe you can patch that up, whether it be Nasim Nunez making a trade for someone else, whether it be maybe making a splash move. Who knows what the Nationals could do with this? But you will have to figure out that shortstop position. And that leads us into this conversation. Where does Eli Willits fit into this whole thing? Where is the number one overall pick, the 17-year-old kid who produced really well down in Fredericksburg this season for a couple of, 20 some odd games this season? Where does he fit in this conversation? When will he be up in the majors? And how good could he be for the Washington Nationals down the line? Let's talk about that after this. Most people cannot name all their financial accounts or even what they are worth, whether it's 401k properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. And that's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. And Monarch is built for people with busy lives. And if you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without even touching a spreadsheet. So if you can identify that you aren't saving as much, well, I can tell you this, if you can't, Monarch can, because Monarch helps you notice inefficient investment allocations and discover forgotten 401ks from your past jobs and maximizing investments, increasing your savings rate. Monarch Money does all of those tricks for you. So don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONMLB. Thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen. If you haven't done so already, look up Locked On Nationals on YouTube and hit that subscriber button. Where does Eli Willits fit into the Washington Nationals at this point? Right now, this year, number one prospect for the Washington Nationals, the former number one overall pick from this past year's draft class. And we talked about him a good chunk. I mean, he had a really impressive debut down in Fredericksburg. And I mean, overall this season, I thought was really good from, again, a 17-year-old kid doing this at a major league level. I mean, it's not the major leagues, but minor league level. He's a professional. Insane to think about that a 17-year-old was down batting 300 and hitting for a little bit of pop here and there. Like Eli Willits, I thought was wildly impressive with where the Nationals are. But we just had a discussion surrounding Abrams and just kind of really why he's not technically the franchise shortstop, but why also you should not move off of him. This is someone who I believe is a second baseman, and I think he could be a really good defensive second baseman as well. But where does Eli Willits fit into this? He is clearly a shortstop. He is going to be your franchise guy. Like, this is someone that you build around. I truly do believe in that. Yes, he was a number one overall pick. He's going to have number one overall pick expectations. But one thing is for sure about Willits' game is he is going to be a defensive stud. That is something that when I drafted him number one overall, or when we drafted him, or when they drafted him number one overall, that was always a lock. When you talk about Ethan Holiday is likely not going to be a shortstop moving forward. And so that takes some of his value away. Yes, he has 70 grade power. Yes, he can hit 450-foot home runs in ways that Willits can't just yet at this point. But I think what Willits provides is consistency. Now, the consistency with Willits is going to come in just kind of like this old school baseball way. Like in today's game, speed and power and just overall high exit velos, those are all things that you really have to be a quote-unquote star player. And that's what baseball executives look for nowadays. But also, you can't forget guys like Eli Willits. I thought Paul Tabone had a great answer, just kind of balancing analytics and also balancing traditional scouting. This is not something that I think a lot of executives do. Like either one way or you're the other. There's really no mixing in between these. And I do believe that right now, Tabone, his idea right now is to kind of mix the traditional scouting and as well with a heavy backed analytics department. So talking about Eli Willits, he kind of fits into the mold of guys where it's like, if you are seeking these high exit velos with good defense and with someone who could really hit like 30 to 40 home runs a year, this is not Eli Willits. That's not his profile. The profile that he brings is kind of like a 2005 first overall pick. Someone who's going to hit for average. Someone who's really good defensively over that shortstop position. He's going to steal some bases, but he's going to do everything the correct way. The son of a professional baseball coach, his dad now being the associate head coach over at the University of Oklahoma now. This is someone who just kind of fits that mold of like your old school kind of player. But I also think Willits has some room to grow. And again, Tabone actually kind of went in on this, and not specifically with Willits, but when talking about different prospects and the way that they develop. If you were to just rule out guys who have swing and miss potential, then that wipes away James Wood coming out of the high school ranks. That wipes away Elijah Green coming out of the high school ranks. Like guys who are mega talented, and unfortunately with Green, obviously that has not worked out yet. But as we've seen with James Wood, the only reason why that guy went in the second round was because he had swing and miss concerns. The Padres and as well as the Nationals, they patched up those problems. And now James Wood is an all-star and looks to be one of the brightest stars in the National League at this point. You would miss on guys like that. And with Willits in this case, in today's game, he kind of fits that mold of someone where it's like, okay, he's not a flashy player. He doesn't have 70, 75 grade power. This guy doesn't have like the elite of the elite skills. But if you look at everything that he does, he's kind of like that prospect of like a Dylan Cruz, where he does have a little bit of power. He hits for average. He doesn't strike out. He's got an eagle eye for a 17-year-old, and he is great defensively. That is kind of a player that, in my opinion, is someone that you can really work for when it comes to analytics. And I do think that Tabone will be able to tap into some power with Eli Willits. It's not going to happen overnight because, again, this is a 17-year-old who does not turn 18 until this December. Think about that for a second. Kids his age back at Oklahoma, they are sitting in a high school right now, taking a test, doing reading logs. This guy is a professional baseball player. Think about that for a second. And right now, over his first season here, he played 15 games, but he was really impressive, I thought, in those 15 games. And one thing that really stood true to me was that he is going to be your franchise guy. So does this play into CJ Abrams and kind of the future with Abrams over at short? I don't think it really helps right now in the near future. Like, Eli Willits is not going to make his major league debut next season. I think we know that. I think there is a very far chance that he makes it in 2027. Maybe if he just flies through the ranks and he's a star, maybe you see him up in 2027. But realistically, we're probably talking about early 2028, maybe middle of 2028. That's how far away we are at this point. But with Abrams, if you move him over to second base and you have that clear opening over at shortstop with Eli Willits potentially making his way up in the next few seasons, you do have that potential to have a lethal middle infield tandem. And I think that's kind of the dream scenario for the Nationals at this point. So while Eli Willits doesn't go into like the now decision-making, this decision to move Abrams over to second base, I think will obviously clear the way for Willits to make his progressions and make that jump up into the majors from the next few seasons. But I also don't think that the Nationals would do that solely because of Willits. Now, if CJ Abrams stays at shortstop and Willits is a major leaguer in 2027 and they move Abrams over to second base, obviously that's going to be the obvious answer there. You got to make that decision. Willits is a better defender, and quite frankly, he's got the highest ceiling on this team outside of James Wood at this point. So for the Nationals' decision-making, Willits does fit in this in a kind of a weird way. But do not think that the Nationals will just move Abrams over to second base just because they drafted Willits. This is going to take some time for Willits to make that jump. And I do think he will make it in a big way eventually, but that will not be in 2026. That will be in maybe 2027 and most likely 2028. That's the kind of timeline that I think the Nationals should be looking for. So, talking about Abrams here, they should not trade him. You will see him in some trade rumors. That is one of my big predictions for this offseason. I ultimately don't think that they will. I think that there's a better chance that they extend him rather than trade him, but we'll just have to see what happens. And I do think this will be something very interesting to monitor moving forward. But I want to take some time here to talk about one of my good friends, Craig Heist, someone that you guys have all heard on Nationals radio. And there's no easy transition, but we'll talk about our good friend Craig Heist after this. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I built parlays, tried player props, and even followed the live lines during games. And it makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. And whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. Again, that is FanDuel.com, and download the FanDuel Sportsbook app today and get started. Again, that is FanDuel.com. And again, download America's #1 sportsbook today. Over this past week, obviously, I think a lot of Nationals fans knew this, but we have lost one of the Nationals radio analysts that has been with this team for years at this point, with one of my dear friends, Craig Heist. And it's really unfortunate news because it's something that, quite frankly, I think not a lot of people saw coming. I mean, this is someone who was just in the press box literally last week over at Capital One Arena, but Craig Heist was someone who is near and dear to my heart. I worked with him over at the Nationals Radio Network a ton. I worked with him over at 106.7 The Fan a ton. And when I would go over to Nationals Park and I'd be sitting in the press box, I'd be sitting next to my guy, Craig Heist. So when I saw the news, I mean, just gutted me after Friday's show here. So seeing that news, it's something that's still not easy to talk about. Craig Heist meant a lot to me. Just even forget as a friend and as a coworker, like this is someone that I grew up listening to, doing Nationals post-game shows, pre and post-game shows, during rain delays, filling some time for Charlie Slows and Dave Jagler. Like this is someone who was a professional, who was a pro's pro, and who was just a great person and ultimately also a great friend. Just 2 weeks ago, I was sitting next to Craig Heist actually in the press box, and he was one of the most fun guys. Like he was the life of the party when it comes to sitting in the press box, talking about Nationals baseball, talking Orioles with him, and really just being a great guy. Like he is one of those guys where if you know, you know. He is one of the better personalities and one of the better guys to talk with when it comes to baseball, when it comes to life, comes to different perspectives on things. This was just a one-of-a-kind human being. And so seeing that news on Friday just gutted me. I mean, this is something that, again, forget the fact that he was a close friend, a close coworker of mine. This is someone who I also grew up listening to. And so I know a lot of Nationals fans out there talking about Craig Heist. I saw a lot of people go back to the interview I had with Craig just a handful of years ago. And of course, I'll post that at some point as well, because I thought Craig always brought some great insights on the Nationals, brought some great insights on just baseball in general. And this guy was an encyclopedia of not even just baseball, but sports in general. I don't think that people really kind of grasp the way how hard people work in this industry. But I think I can say this confidently. No one worked as hard as Craig Heist. This is someone who is at Camden Yards for a 1 p.m. game and then would make it up to Nationals Park for a 6:45 first pitch. Not many people are making that drive in DC rush hour traffic. But Craig Heist would make that drive each and every single day. He would go out there, he would do his player interviews. The players loved him. This is someone who, again, has been around baseball forever, dating back into the 80s. Like, he has been around the Orioles really for the most part, but really since the Nationals came back in 2005, he has been one of the more prominent baseball voices here in DC. So seeing Craig ultimately pass away, really tough to see. Just a lot of Nationals fans will miss that voice as someone who's great on post-game shows. I mean, again, when talking about some of the voices of Nationals baseball, you think of Charlie Slows, you think of Dave Jagler, and right beside them, there's Craig Heist. So it sucks to see that. I mean, it's one of those things where it just did not feel real in the moment. And now, one of my good friends, someone that I think we're all familiar with on the airwaves here in DC, is no longer with us. And Craig, one of my good friends in the industry, someone I really looked up to in a big way, rest in peace to one of our very good friends, Craig Heist.